Good afternoon, Sekou Radio, Sarasota, Florida. Today it's rainy. And we have a great guest today, a good friend of mine. His name is Jerry Addicott. Hails from California, born in Los Angeles in 1932. They call him a depression baby. Learned the ukulele from his dad, who lived in Hawaii for a time, as did Jerry. Pick up guitar on his own. It's just two more strings freshman year in college, University of California, Berkeley. Happened to have a roommate who taught him banjo. Worked most of his life in Washington, D.C. for IBM. Always had a hobby of playing in a traditional jazz band. Some with the great names like the Federal Jazz Commission and the original Washington Monumental Jazz Band. Founding member of the Buck Creek Jazz Band, played together about 30 years, many jazz festivals and cruises, 20 plus records and CDs. Living in Sarasota for 22 years, several bands, including his own, Second Wind Jazz ensembles. There's nothing more fun than creating music with others, particularly as a hobby. So keep your day job. That's the Jerry Addicott. Jerry, that's a pretty expensive, pretty heavy resume. Is anything I can add to that?
Oh, well, I think we've got to spend a lot of time adding to it while we're talking.
Welcome to Sekou. Welcome to Sekou Radio, Jerry Addicott. So that's a pretty good resume. For you, what is the definition of music for you?
Oh, well, to me, music has to have three things: melody, harmony, and rhythm. A lot of very modern jazz stars, interpreters, have kind of gone away from melody, even gone away from rhythm. I'm thinking the very free form kind of jazz. I don't like that. I like tunes you can hum and sing along with, harmonize with, sing with, and play with. Now, that covers a wide variety of things. I like classical music, I like opera, musicals, musical comedy, Hawaiian music, country and western music, and traditional jazz, like this. Which is one of the CDs that my Buck Creek Jazz Band made a few years ago.
All right, can you play that one more time for a minute so we can hear a little bit more?
The banjo is me.
All right, I like that.
Yeah.
That's a great music. So banjo, let's talk about this banjo. What is a banjo?
Well, a banjo is an instrument that came originally, it is believed, and I'm sure it's true, from Africa, where people would hollow out gourds and perhaps put strings over them and pluck them or play them. And its kin, its other instruments similar, of course, are guitar, ukulele, violin, and cello. They have 4 strings, but the banjo is typified by having a skin or now plastic head. It's not made out of wood. They're made out of, well, the handle's wood, but the body of the banjo is typically metal and has a head of originally skin, but now plastic. It has a harsh, sharp, brilliant sound. Very good for backing up a Dixieland band front line of cornet, trombone, and clarinet.
Now, when you say band, how many different, with that music we just listened to, how many different instruments are being played in that particular?
Traditional 7-piece New Orleans style jazz band. Cornet, trombone, and clarinet, front line. Rhythm section is piano, drums, tuba, and of course, banjo.
Wow. Now, you mentioned that banjo originated in Africa. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, I'm certainly not a banjo historian, but people brought them over and made them out of, old materials to create a little music and have their own little parties. There's another style of banjo, a 5-string banjo, and that's what most people think of. It's also called a plectrum banjo, and that's the kind of banjo you hear in country music, bluegrass in particular.
Right.
There are 4 strings that are fretted that you move your fingers up and down to change the notes, and the 5th string is a short string. It's called the drone, and I think of it as kind of similar to the drone in a bagpipe. It never changes its tone. It's always the same. You can't change that 5th string. And of course, that country music, hillbilly, bluegrass, from the Appalachian Mountains was pretty much started by Scots and Irish people that came over with their ideas of music.
Right. Now, the style you play is New Orleans style, right?
Yeah, it's otherwise known sometimes as Dixieland, traditional, tunes written by people like Jelly Roll Morton and Louis Armstrong, Scott Joplin, and of course many of the tunes that my band played were written by members of the band. It's more the style, not necessarily the age of the composition. But it's, as I said in my little...
You mentioned it in that name, Louis Armstrong. Is that the same, similar? Yeah.
Yeah, he was a New Orleans jazz man, came up to Chicago and played in the King Oliver jazz band. We play tunes written by Sidney Bechet. Sidney Bechet was an American clarinetist that went over to Europe and lived much of his life in France. Wrote many good tunes like Dans la rue d'Antibes and If You See My Mother, which is a gorgeous tune. Anyway, go ahead.
Sidney Bechet.
Sidney Bechet.
Sidney Bechet played it with Louis Armstrong?
No, I don't think he played with Louis, but he mostly lived in France. If any of the listeners have seen a movie called Midnight in Paris, the whole first part, Scenes of Paris, the accompaniment is the actual recording of Sidney Bechet playing that wonderful tune, which I don't remember how to say its name in French. If You See My Mother.
Let's try.
Give it a try. Yeah.
Si tu as vu ma maman.
That's it.
Si tu as vu ma maman. Wow.
Yeah.
This is interesting. You've been playing.
Let me play a little bit more of this right now. This is a tune called Algiers Strut. It's an old New Orleans tune, very simple, very melodic. And of course, the fun part of playing this kind of music is you don't use music, you don't use written music. You just play what you hear.
Mm-hmm.
And in the seven of us listen to each other very carefully all the time. You've got to anticipate what the other people are doing. It's very, very close knit.
You got 7 people on the band.
That's right. And we all lived in the Washington, D.C. area. We all had lots of different jobs. This is a hobby, not a career. And all the time I worked for IBM, which was about 40 years, I managed to just play the music as a hobby. Even when we would take long weekends and fly across the country and play in jazz festivals, I managed to husband my vacation time carefully so that I could do that. That's why in my little intro bio, my last comment was, enjoy music as a hobby, but keep your day job. Unless, of course, you're really good and can make money at it. But we didn't make much money.
You sound good to me. You could have gone farther than what you're doing. It sounds very good, Jerry.
Well, it really was a good band. And the other bands I played in were good too. I mentioned the Federal Jazz Commission. We had a lot of fun with that. We played Thursday nights in a rather grungy pizza place in Arlington, Virginia. And
right.
Our leader was a kind of a crazy clarinet player. Actually, there are those that say that most clarinet players are a little crazy. A man named Fred Starr, brilliant musician, Russian scholar, became president of Oberlin College, headed the Jazz Institute in New Orleans. But he would be up there on the stand and we'd be playing, and here some woman would come up and say, "Oh, sir, are you people really a federal commission?" "Why, yes, ma'am," he would say. "Haven't you seen our building down on the mall there in Washington? We're right next to the FBI. You should come visit us sometime." "Oh, thank you." Zany. He was zany.
Now you mentioned that you have been playing 30 years together. How you manage that? You did the cruises, festivals, and
yeah.
How that happened? Were you?
I sometimes wonder about that myself, since the two guys that started the band, the cornet and the trombone, great musicians, but they really didn't like each other. In fact, none of us liked the trombone player. He was really kind of obnoxious. In fact, he was very obnoxious. I hope he's not listening to this. I better be quiet. But you know, and we'd there'd be arguments and